Hi friends, welcome back to a new video. Today I decided to do a video on books that are related to Titanic or have a Titanic theme to it, have something to do with the Titanic. I have a fascination of Titanic. I found out later, after I had developed a fascination of Titanic, that we have a small connection to it. My family came from Sweden, so they settled in Minnesota. Someone was sick. I believe it was my great grandmother who went back to Sweden with her sister to care for their father, and they ran away, or they fled to America because he was drunk and he was abusive. So then when they went back to care for him, by the sounds of it, he found Christ. So he ended up passing away. So then it was time for the sisters to come back. And this was during the time of Titanic. Titanic was launching, as we all know. And they almost went on the Titanic. And I think they realized that it was going to be too busy. They said, nah, let's not. Let's go on a different ship. Close call. I would not be here. My mom would not be here. None of us would be here if they had, because they would have been steerage and they would not have made it. So I'm thankful that they didn't. So that was definitely, I would say that was a nudge by the Holy Spirit to not go. So I'm super thankful for it. So that's my little connection to the Titanic. So let's start with The Midnight Watch. This is by David Dyer. I gave this a 4-star rating. This is about the Californian. If you know anything about the Titanic, the Californian was the ship that was off in the distance that they could see, but it did not come to their rescue. And so it was slow moving, but there is quite a bit of investigation in this book. I don't remember if there's any swearing in it. There is, I remember there is some infidelity, but it doesn't go into detail. You just know it happened. It's interesting going through the book. I don't know how accurate this is. I don't know how true this is. But I did enjoy, after everything was all finished up, I did like how everything came together. It was just an interesting perspective on the Titanic. I The reason I gave it 4 stars is just because it was just slow moving. So if you're in the mood for something a little bit slower, this is a good one. It is, I mean, it's a different perspective, and I think I've been curious about the Californian, so that's what this one is about. The next book I recommend is called The Girl Who Came Home by Hazel Gaynor. I I really enjoyed this. I think I read this 2 years ago. I gave this 5 stars. This is dual timeline. Great granddaughter is doing a story on the girl who came home. So this is a story based on the Otter Ghoul 14. I didn't know anything about it until I read this book. And if you don't know anything about it, let me tell you. So the Otter Ghoul 14 is Otter Ghoul, Ireland, is a village in Ireland. This group of people is known to have had the greatest devastation caused from the Titanic. So there were 16 people on this trip, 14 perished. So you go through the story. So it goes back and forth from one chapter to one chapter is the Titanic era. The next chapter is the great granddaughter researching this and discovering this. So it's a very sweet story. It's a very sweet ending. I loved this. I still think about this. It lives rent free in my head still to this day. So I would highly recommend that book. The next one, I have recently mentioned this one. It is Unsinkable by Jenny L. Walsh. and this one was a 5 stars. So this one is based on, it is also dual timeline. It is based on Violet Jessup, who I believe she's the only one who has been on all 3 ships and has survived all 3 sinkings. So all 3 ships would be the Titanic, the Olympic, and the Britannic. All 3 ships have sunk. She has survived all 3. And it goes through this story, and there is a connection. There is someone else involved in this story, so in the other timeline, and I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to say anything. It buttons up at the end because the whole time I'm reading this, I'm like, how are these connected? You'll find out. It is great. So that's another book I recommend. The next one is called Sheltering Angel. I do not have the physical copy, so I will have the cover right here. This one is by Luella Bryant, and I actually never heard of this book until my husband came home from the doctor's office, and he noticed, he knows my love for Titanic, and he noticed a lady sitting in the waiting area reading it, and he was drawn to it. He's like, "Oh, wow, can you tell me about this book?" And so he got a picture of it and he showed me, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh." So, of course, if I know it's Titanic, I'm going to look into it and I'm going to read it. I'll just read the synopsis for you and then you can decide from here. Here's the synopsis. He spent 20 years learning to be invisible. One night in April changed everything. Andrew Cunningham is a Scottish ship's steward, a man of quiet intelligence and fierce pride, who has spent 2 decades polishing silver for people who look cleanly through him. She is a sharp-witted New York socialite, a woman who has never once gone unnoticed. 2 people from worlds a galaxy apart, with no reasons to ever truly see each other. But when fate lands them both aboard the maiden voyage of the RMS Titanic, the distance between first class and steerage begins to feel impossibly thin. As the grandeur of the floating palace unfolds around them, something darker stirs beneath the surface. Coal fires smoldering in the hold, ice warnings ignored, a red morning sky that no one wants to read. What follows is not the Titanic story most people know. It is quieter than that, and far more devastating. A story told in borrowed wristwatches and closed piano lids, in promises made across a tilting deck and kept for 20 years after. Some nights leave a mark that no amount of living can erase, and some friendships are pressed together by history and simply refuse to come apart. So I loved this book. I gave it a 5 stars. It is slow moving until you get to the Titanic. Then it gets exciting. But leading up to it, after having read it, it is important to read both of the backstory of the 2 people who cross paths. But I will give a warning. Do not, under any circumstances, Google any of these people, because it will spoil, you will spoil it for yourself. And that's what I did. I didn't do it to get any spoilers. I did it to get a face to the name. But then, like, once I looked up some of these names, it said fatal or lost at sea or survived. And I'm like, dang it. I just messed it up for myself. And it was like, even before the sinking, like, I would come across some of these people in the book. I'm like, what does this person look like? Don't do it. Don't do it. Do it after you've read the book. I think I cried, if I remember right. The end was very, very touching, very moving. I highly recommend it. And I just discovered that the author wrote a sequel to this one. And let me pull that up here. It's called Sheltering Angel of Bello Wood. So I'll have this right here. That is what happens after Titanic. So don't read the story, don't read the synopsis, don't read anything until you've read Sheltering Angel, because the synopsis will spoil it for you. So I just wanted to show you that she wrote a sequel for it. I'm planning on reading it, but don't read the synopsis if you haven't read the first book yet. Next book I read is The Second Mrs Astor, and that is also a 5-star read. I listened to it on audiobook, and let me pull that synopsis up for you. I really enjoyed her perspective. You don't know, she married to JJ Astor? Yeah, JJ Astor. They were the richest people on the ship at that time. It was quite scandalous for them to be married because she was 17 and he was 48, I believe. And she was pregnant. I believe she was 3 months pregnant, and I believe that this was their honeymoon. It it follows how they met. It follows leading up to the Titanic and afterwards. Her story has interested me as well, just because you don't really hear much about her, but there's there's a lot of speculation about her. It's been interesting to listen to her side of the story in a way. So let me read the synopsis for you. Madeline Talmadge Force is just 17 when she attracts the attention of John Jacob, or Jack Astor. Madeline is beautiful, intelligent, and solidly upper class, but the Astors are in a league apart. Jack's mother was the Mrs. Astor, American royalty and New York's most formidable socialite. Jack is dashing and industrious, a hero of the Spanish-American War, an inventor, and a canny businessman. Despite their 29-year age difference and the scandal of Jack's recent divorce, Madeline falls headlong into love and becomes the press's favorite target. On their extended honeymoon in Egypt, the newlyweds finally find a measure of peace from photographers and journalists. Madeline feels truly alive for the first time and is happily pregnant. The couple plans to return home in the spring of 1912 aboard an opulent new ocean liner. When the ship hits an iceberg close to midnight on April 14th, there is no immediate panic. The swift the swift state-of-the-art RMS Titanic seems unsinkable. As as Jack helps Madeline into a lifeboat, he assures her that he'll see her soon in New York. 4 months later, the Astor's Fifth Avenue mansion, a widowed Madeline gives birth to their son. In the wake of the disaster, the press has elevated her to the state of virtuous, tragic heroine. But Madeline's most important decision still lies ahead: whether to accept the role assigned to her or carve out her own remarkable path. So I put this down as 5 stars. I thought I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed her perspective, and not just like from the Titanic, but also beyond Titanic. She's now having to take care of this of her son. So it was interesting. I really enjoyed it. So then the next one, looks like that's the last one, is The Dressmaker. So let me get that pulled up. So it's The Dressmaker by Kate Alcott. And this was also 5 stars. I listened to this on audiobook. This girl wanted to have a new life. I believe she's from England, and she's lived her whole life being a seamstress and sewing for her family. And she ended up meeting this woman who employs her to become a dressmaker. I if Let me go through the synopsis. Anyway, so there is a love story in here, and I don't want to give too much away. I don't want to give anything away, but I did enjoy this book because she basically, it's kind of like a rags to riches kind of story. The Titanic is involved in this story, so she did end up on the Titanic. I'm not going to give anything else away. And let me get the synopsis for you. Tess, an aspiring seamstress, thinks she's had an incredibly lucky break when she is hired by famous designer Lady Lucille Duff Gordon to be her personal maid on the Titanic. Once on board, Tess catches the eye of two men, a kind sailor and an enigmatic Chicago businessman, who offer differing views of what lies ahead for her in America. But on the fourth night, disaster strikes, and amidst the chaos, Tess is one of the last people allowed on a lifeboat. The survivors are rescued and taken to New York, but when rumors begin to circulate about the choices they made, Tess is forced to confront a serious question. Did Lady Duff Gordon save herself at the expense of others? Torn between loyalty to Lucille and her growing suspicion that the media's charges might be true, Tess must decide whether to stay quiet and keep her fiery mentor's goodwill or face what might be true and forever change her future. So now I remember this is, I think it was the last lifeboat that was released from the ship, and there was rumor that there was only well-to-do people on it who paid like certain crew members not to let anybody else on to keep it sparse on that ship. And so she has the decision to make. And that's all I'm going to say. So, if you know of any, like if you've read any Titanic themed books or any books that are inspired by Titanic, I would love to hear about it. I love reading about Titanic. Let me know in the comments what books you've read have to do with Titanic, and I'll add that to my TBR. So I hope you enjoyed this list, and let me know if you do end up reading it or if you've read any of these at all, what you thought about them. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.